Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple systems that are next in line to get fed. And what I bought down from my freezer for them is in this green plastic tray. In the plastic bag on top, there's a whole bunch of spoiled tomatoes, under which you'll find a whole bunch of spoiled peppers. And this has a good bit of weight to it. Presumably the best part of it is moisture, water content coming in with the juicy veggies. The little guys that are scheduled to be fed today are the original red wiggler worms. They live in these gray trays right here. They've been living in these gray trays now for 9 weeks. That's 63 days. And it's been 11 days now since we last checked in on them. I applied the last feeding in a kind of a novel fashion. Sometimes you'll add sheets of cardboard layered in between the portions of food. And some people refer to that as lasagna style feeding application, and that's how we applied the food that they got last time. I'm pretty sure that the stuff they got last time would probably have been depleted by now after 11 days, but we'll see. This will be feeding number 7, so let's get these systems up on the bench and take care of getting them fed. Alright, I can see that the plastic covers have been causing the recirculation of moisture in these systems quite nicely. Pretty interesting to see how soaked this top covering newspaper has become. Is like a little puddle forming right there. So I don't have replacement coffee filters to use. Well, I do, but I mean, I didn't come down with a couple days worth of coffee, which would usually come with a couple filters that we could use as replacement feeding zone indicators. So these feeding zone indicators, we'll just set them aside and reuse them at the end as a little marker to show where we last fed. Man, things are so damp here that these top covering pieces of newspaper are just sort of sticking right to the feeding zone indicators. Kind of making me wonder, how come we don't have a whole bunch of worms just hanging out there splish splashing in the moisture? Perhaps it's because the feeding was so awesome that we gave them last time that they're actually all down in there enjoying it. You could see all this leafy top cover I laid out as a top dressing after the last feeding. I've got my leaf supply here on standby so we can do it again, and what we could do with this stuff in here that's been seasoned now for the past 11 days is just sort of blend it into the bedding. Okay. Moisture levels seem good here, and you know, if you ask me, all those tomatoes and peppers coming in today as they're feeding are probably going to bring with them a good bit of moisture as well. Alright. I just sort of breezed really quickly through the video from last time, but I didn't really pay that much attention to the types of foods that were applied here. So the stuff that I'm looking at here, I'm wondering what this could be. It sort of resembles bread just because of the amount of mold developing on it. So that could explain it. I do remember an old bagel being used as food in one of my systems recently. When I see something in the bin that's covered in mold and even kind of dry and crumbly, almost to the point where when you touch it, the mold spores get airborne. Yeah, kind of gross, I know, but whatever. There's a good likelihood that what you're looking at there is some sort of a bread product. Ooh, okay, that was fun. I just peeked under that one layer of cardboard that was used to set up the lasagna style feeding, and I saw a little bit of a worm party happening over there. And now I believe we're also starting to uncover some of the lasagna layers over here too, as well as a fairly moldy object, probably bread, over here too. And every time I hit something that kicks up a little pocket of dust, I feel like I should back off. Alright, that's kind of what I was expecting, to see that the worms have nibbled their way through some of the cardboard in order to gain access to the foods, or maybe just because they're enjoying that as a alternate food source in addition to whatever it is that was placed in here to feed them last time. I mean, I am seeing signs of cantaloupe melon rind, so that could have been part of it last time, and I believe we've already determined that it was probably a bread type product that was also included, which is taking on a nice moldy appearance. And while this piece of cantaloupe melon rind appears to have been stripped clean of all of its delicious goodness, this piece here somehow, yeah, seems to be holding up a little bit, still with a little bit of the fruity material still adhering to it, with the number of worms on it, trying to work it down. But usually after 11 days, you would kind of expect that the worms will have taken cantaloupe to this point where the kind of tough outer skin is still there, but all the soft stuff's been chewed away. I'll tell you, these sheets of cardboard seem to be in good enough shape to just be reused to kind of reset the lasagna layers. So why don't we do that? I see banana stems here, as well as some of the banana peel still attached to it. Yeah, I just don't remember what it is that we fed last time, but it could have been some of those things, or some of those things could just still be lingering here as leftovers from other feedings gone by. Oh, here we have a pumpkin stem too. Various types of leftovers that we're encountering, and other slow composting foods that are showing up here as leftovers, such as this husk of a mango seed that was cut in half. My guess is that the other half is probably over in bin number 2, but that leads me to thinking that we're probably set to go rummage through bin number 2 to see how things look over there. I think from a moisture perspective, things look good here. The bedding seems nice. The progress of the food seems to be in order. I'm trying to remember the numbers. It was sort of around 2250, I believe, was the worm count in this system, and then over in bin number 2, somehow 2500, a slightly higher number of worms, but not by much, I believe came out to be the estimated worm count for bin number 2. Yeah, see that? Once we get down to the very bottom where all the moisture's been settling from the foods that they got, that's where we're finding a lot of worms chilling out and just enjoying it. So that was kind of fun. I'm just thinking I'm going to excavate a little bit more, because I do want to leave room so that we can place the food back in there with the dividing layers of lasagna cardboard. And now I'm going to follow suit with what I usually do when I'm dealing with buddy bins or sister bins, brother bins. I think we could pick up the pace a little bit here and just sort of similarly excavate, trying to gather. Look at that piece right there. Let's remove the cardboard. Look at that. The cardboard totally prevented the worms from gaining access to this juicy piece of fruit. And I'm sure they tried. I'm sure they went digging at it and trying to nibble through the cardboard. Well, I'm not that sure, but it seems reasonable to think that they probably would have tried. Or maybe they're not like that, you know. Maybe they're more like, hey, you know, that's too much of a pain to get at. Let's go find something that's easier to access. That might be more along the lines of how the worms operate. So we've got leftovers, and we are going to be pretty generous with all that tomato and pepper today. But I do suppose we have the option to scale back what was going to be fed today by maybe not giving them all of what I came down here with, because it is a lot of food that I came down here with. And it doesn't necessarily have to all get fed to the worms if we feel that that would be impractical. We've got a pretty good sized pumpkin stem over here too. So I think we, in general, have been managing to find 3 sheets of cardboard. I think that's what I found over here. Look at this piece too. Quite a bit of leftover. You know, I'm starting to wonder if perhaps one or the other of the food items that I came down here with should simply go back in the freezer. That's kind of my gut feeling. So I think that might be what we're going to do. Yep, here's the predicted half of a mango shell, or the shell of a seed from a mango. And similarly, a good bit of moisture down in the feeding zone, or underneath the feeding zone, where we're finding a good many of the worms hanging out, taking advantage of it. So yeah, I think I'm having a little bit too much fun here. I think it's time to proceed to the reset of the feeding zone. And, you know, oh boy, avalanche going on here. I think it is good practice, even if it doesn't seem necessary, to add a little bit of bedding. So even though it doesn't seem too important, I am going to just stick to the routine of including some bedding with today's feeding underneath the feeding zone. And let's start in with the lasagna layers. Here's one layer, and here's another layer. And I suppose at the same time we can start dropping in some of the leftovers too. Let's keep those down near the bottom, and then we can start stacking in the new stuff. It does seem like, even though I think we had a smaller number, I could be mixing it up though for whatever reason. If we've got more worms here, it's unusual to find that we've got more leftovers over there. So let's, this is a little bit awkward, you know. I think I'm just going to put these back in the freezer just the way they are. And it is a significant amount that I'm reducing the feeding size by doing that. But I think we're going to be okay considering the leftovers. So it does sort of make sense to me to do it this way. So let's see how it pans out. We're going to drop in some food, drop in another layer of lasagna cardboard. We've got pumpkin stems here, banana peel or banana stem. What other leftovers? Another pumpkin stem, and yeah, things are starting to look pretty good in here. You can see how bad some of these peppers looked. I did my best to salvage as many of the pepper seeds as I could because I've been collecting pepper seeds now for some time. Every time there's peppers around, I'll always try to collect up the seeds and set them aside and let them dry so that when the time comes to prepare my next batch of worm chow, the pepper seeds are one of the primary ingredients. I mean, I didn't really go too far out of my way to remove them all. Some of them were just kind of in there and I didn't worry too much about it. Perhaps the pepper was just a little bit too gross already to be handled. Some of them were already transforming into liquid. And let's see, let's give them a little grit too to help with the meal. You know, it did seem a little bit overblown coming down here with all that stuff. And I do believe we did the right thing by scaling back on what we gave them here today. It did seem like it would have been just way too much to give them all that stuff. And I'm curious, do you agree? Hopefully most people believe that what I'm doing here is the right thing. I mean, I usually do get some sort of feedback, suggestions, opportunities to do something better, do something different. And I always appreciate all that feedback. But I do have a tendency to just kind of follow my gut on some of this stuff. Try to avoid letting myself get too mechanical and too caught up in doing things in a predetermined way and then leading to a situation where it's kind of regrettable that that was done when it would have been better to kind of adapt to the needs of the situation. And it's weird, you know, there's little pockets of dry stuff, but as I excavate from down lower, what comes up is very damp. So I do believe that from a moisture perspective, even though there are sections where the moisture seems like it could be more, I think we're okay. And you know, I did think about coming back in here with some more leaves as top dressing since we've now blended in what was there. So let's do that. Let's continue on with that. Perhaps we don't have to go too overboard on how many we drop in here. But it always does seem like a really nice type of a bedding that the worms probably really appreciate. So when it's possible, I do like the idea of including some of the leaves as top dressing, presuming that I've maintained my supply of them adequately. Lots and lots of moisture going on over here. And that's exactly the purpose of the plastic covers, is to help the moisture in the system remain in the system rather than being lost to evaporation, leading to a really cozy spot that the worms probably enjoy living in. So I believe that brings us to the end of today's check-in with these red wiggler worms, the original red wiggler worms that I believe are the only worms that I can really track back to the very first batch of worms that I started out with all those years ago. So they're kind of like a nostalgia batch of worms that we like to take special care of, but we don't discriminate. We don't treat them any better than all the other worms. So I've got a few things over here that need to be cleaned up and put away. But I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.